Welcome to the Freedom Driven Landscaper podcast brought to you by the Lucrative Landscaping book. Super happy to have you here. Have you been on a podcast before?
I have not. This is my first time.
Oh, really exciting. Yeah.
I was really excited when I got the email,
Oh, nice.
that
Yeah,
there was an
nice.
opportunity and, I'm a kind of a nerd about the industry, so I like to shop talk, I guess you could say. I like to be
Yeah.
able to showcase both sides of, what it's like in this industry, the good and the bad, and
Right.
both
Yeah.
that come with it, definitely. So we're in Louisville, Kentucky. This will be our 4th year in business, I believe. We do a lot of maintenance stuff, snow removal, mowing. We also do a good bit of landscape installations and stuff like that. We don't really venture as much into the hardscaping stuff yet. I was kind of hesitant to pick it up without being super knowledgeable about it. I don't want to
Yeah.
sell something, and I just wouldn't want to put myself in a position to
Yeah. No,
make a mistake.
I've
I
bitten
don't
off
want to
more
do.
than I can chew so many times.
Yeah,
Yeah. No, I have
I've
so
done it
many
too
funny
myself. Don't
stories.
get me wrong. I've
Oh,
I've
yeah.
done it plenty of times, but I
So
think
is it something you want to add on later, or
yeah,
what are
it's
you
definitely
thinking?
something I'm looking to add on later. For me, I think I want to go through a couple classes and stuff of just kind of learning the fundamentals of it. I've worked for a design group in the past that did a lot of hardscaping and stuff when I was a little bit younger, and so I have some knowledge of it, but I'd like to know it 100%. So that way, it'll help me sell it better, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah.
Be able to really sell it and be confident in what I'm selling.
Right. So there's a lot of people listening who are going to be kind of trying to figure out where you're at compared to them, and then taking your advice and trying to follow in your footsteps. Like maybe you could tell me a little bit about sort of a typical day for you, like what a day looks like, and then that'll
Yeah,
help everybody listening kind of fall into what their lives are like compared to yours. So when they're hearing you
yeah,
say your stories, they
yeah,
can see where we're coming from.
absolutely. So typically, for me, my day gets started around 6 ish. Get up, eat my breakfast, whatever. I'm usually to the shop by about 7, 6:45, 7, somewhere in there. Typically we start at 7:30. That's usually our start time most days. Now, if it's rained the night before or something, maybe a little bit different. And then, when we get started for the day, we try to do a little walkthrough of, what we have going for the day, what's on the list and whatnot, kind of run it through. I have about 5 guys that, as of right now, that work for me and work with us. I'm sorry. And, so I usually walk them through, if there's anything detailed on a job site that they're going to kind of get them started in that way. And then typically I use from about 8:30 to about noon. I usually use that time to do estimates, send out emails, do kind of all the back end stuff, to keep things rolling. And then
Have
typically about, I'm
Is
sorry.
is your office at your shop, or what's your setup like?
Yes. So yeah. So I'm right now. I have a set. The way I'm set up right now is my house and my shop are on the same property.
Okay,
Um,
nice.
it's a little bit of a bigger property. I've got a shop on the back side of it. So I have an office in my house, and then also have an office in the shop.
Okay.
Uh, I kind of bounce to and from because I'm a little bit ADHD, and
Yeah.
sitting into one place for too long tends to be a little bit difficult for me. So I like to have different sceneries,
Yeah, yeah.
as
So
far as when I'm working.
I'm a nerd for the details. Do you bring a laptop back and forth, or do you have
Oh
2
yeah.
full offices,
So
or
I have a desktop. I have a Mac desktop in my office, and then I have one in my
okay.
home office as well. And then I always
Yeah.
have
And
my
and the
MacBook with
laptop.
me. Yeah, at all
Right.
times, just because I don't know. I almost feel like naked without it, almost not having it,
Yeah.
because I wouldn't be able to. If I'm out in the field, I can connect to my phone's Wi-Fi and send out an email if I need to real quick or something like that.
Right.
Um,
So
so
you were
yeah,
saying you're saying you're doing the you have everybody meets at 7:30. What time are they out by? Did you say
typically
that?
it, it's it depends on the day, really, and depends on what kind of job. Mowing guys, I like to have them out by 7:45, 7:50 at the latest. Um, Unfortunately, right now I don't have fuel on site, so I try to get them out of here quicker so we can get fueled up. We try to fuel up the night before. I'd love to tell you that we do it every time, but we don't. It's just not,
Yeah.
just doesn't
Yeah.
work out like that a lot of times for us. So I'll get them to the gas station. I try to have them to the first site around 8:15 as far as mowing goes. Landscaping's a little bit different because we might have to load up some trees. We might have to load up some shrubs.
Yeah.
It really varies. So typically no later than 8:15 though, is
Yep.
typically my rule of thumb. If somebody's here past 8:15,
They're
we're
being
gonna
too
have to
slow.
know what, yeah, we're
Yeah.
moving a little too, we gotta go and put some pep in our step, I guess you could say, and figure
Yeah.
out what's going on. And
So
it happens. I mean, there's been days that it's happened and, you just
do you
deal with it
have,
as it comes.
do you have, like, checklists and things like that that you follow, and how did you
Well,
develop
I'll
those?
be honest. So I'm a kind of a checklist fanatic. I almost make too many checklists for myself probably. And
Okay,
so
cool.
I've been one of my biggest goals for this year was kind of getting it down to one checklist a day, just making my
Okay.
daily and trying, because I get a little bit disorganized just from having so many different ones. It's just easy to do sometimes. And
Oh, yeah, for
so
sure.
yes, I'm definitely a checklist person. I write my list, usually the night before just so I can remember everything. And
Do
sometimes
you
there's things that get added and sometimes there's, how it goes. And so
for
yeah,
sure.
I'm definitely a fan of checklists.
Do you have the teams, follow that process too, or is it more you,
Eh,
following the list?
So it's more me following the
Yeah.
list. That's something where I'm working on implementing this year, is
Mhm.
kind of getting a good documentation system between me and my guys of, giving them a good workflow, I guess you could say, of getting the information to them. And that way they know it's easier for them to have it lined out and say,
Yeah.
you know, boom, 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 check it off, get done for the day. Uh,
Right.
as
So
far as like
fuel would be
routing
one of
and
them.
yes, yes, definitely.
What else would you put on that list? Because I'm curious about this because I have a lot of, clients that I work with and people that I talk to who and I think that you're an expert in this, so based on what you've said so far. So I'm curious what you think because I think a lot of guys kind of overthink what SOPs should be, right? Like to a point where they'll
Yes.
pay thousands and thousands of dollars for coaches to tell them, and it's like I don't, and I've experienced it too. There was this point in my life where I don't know what I thought was going to be on those lists that was going to be so magical, but it's like fill up the fuel.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a lot of times it's just as simple as that. And that's something I've really been trying. I tend to or kind of overcomplicate things, I guess you should say. And yeah, it literally is just as basic. Honestly, for guys working in the field and stuff, they don't want to be dumbed down with a bunch of language and a bunch of, vocabulary. They need something
Yeah.
simple that they don't want to look at it 100 times. They can go back to it and, reference it if they need to. Um, but yeah, definitely it's the simple things 100% and kind of getting a good system in. I got stuff that's hanging up around the shop that, we are changing oil or sharpening the mower blades or sharpening the hedge trimmers, kind of just all that good
Yeah.
stuff. And that they can refer to. For the most part, they don't have to a whole bunch if they are experienced in doing it. But for the guys that aren't, they at least have
Right.
that option there. They can look through it and they can get trained up on it and, you know, become familiar with the process.
That's a good way to look at it, rather than I mean, I know you say you want to have one list for the day, but I guess that's more for you because I like what you
Yeah,
said
that's
about kinda having a list for each station or for each job sort of thing, yeah. Or
yeah,
maybe it's like it's the checklist for getting out of the shop in the morning, and then it's the checklist for what you do when you get back in the evening, yeah, for so that way you sort of have, like, a time trigger to know which
yeah,
checklist to be looking at. Yeah. No, that's cool, I think that would help a lot of businesses because what I see often happening is you've probably seen it too, where guys start to sort of discipline their team for falling short on things that they've never been properly trained in the first place, or they don't have the
yeah.
resources. So it's like if they're forgetting stuff, if they're forgetting stuff in the morning, but and you haven't given them some sort of tool to use to make sure
It's
they don't
on
forget.
it's on us.
Yeah.
That's the way I've seen it. So I've actually worked, in my time previously as being in employee places and kind of places that were kind of set up like that, if you should
Mm,
say. And it's kind of showed me how the boss that I never want to be, if that makes
mm,
sense. Kind
yeah.
of, you got to set your guys up for success. A lot of times we stand in our own ways as business owners. We tend to overcomplicate things. And so one big thing for me is I try to listen and take in my guys on what they're saying to me, what they're telling me. I try to value their opinion and try to, if they have a good idea on something, I'm definitely not always the smartest guy in the room. There's definitely I try to keep that, I don't know, kind of keep that in the back of my head. And so that I know that I'm not the best at everything, and there's always a way that we can grow. And I may not have that way, and there may be somebody else on our team that gives it to us, and not to just
Yeah.
write it off as it being dumb or something,
Yeah.
when it could really,
It's it's tough because you want to empower them to think for themselves, but then at the same time, you gotta filter a lot of their ideas.
yeah, absolutely, yeah. It's a tough balance, and it's a tough. I'll be honest, that's one of the tougher things for me is just kind of I don't know, just kind of not. I try not to be, I don't want to be. I can't be a yes man. Obviously, being a boss, you got to be able to stand your ground and say no, we're not.
What's
That's not happening
Yeah,
today. But at
this
the
is
same
good for
time,
you, but not good for the company. Yeah.
right, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so it's definitely a tough balance to find. And to be honest, I'm still working on finding it. And
Yeah.
you just kind of learn as I wish there was a better way, but kind of just learning as I go. And
Yeah. Yeah, for
taking what
sure.
I've seen, taking what I've seen, and I have worked for another very successful landscaping company out of Louisville with that. I learned a lot from.
Yeah. Was
I
there
even worked
anything
for
in
them.
particular that stood out?
Really,
Anything that
just
you remember?
I got a lot of knowledge on planting material because they were a specialized design group. I got a lot of knowledge on pruning, the
Yeah.
different types of shrubs and all that different stuff. You know,
Right.
I, they run tight systems. They're every day we come in, we clock in, you're loading up the trucks, you're out of there by 7:45. At the end of the day, you got a report you got to write what you did for the day and stuff like that. They're a little bit old school in that sense of, I guess we're kind of moving to a new age of technology and stuff. And a lot of guys can do it for their phone. You know, Me personally, I don't remember things as well if I don't write them. I almost have to write it, and the phone it doesn't resonate with me as well.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, and honestly, the owner of that company was, yeah, in my opinion, he's the best boss I've ever worked for.
Oh,
Owns a
nice.
very large company, and he would be in the back of the truck shoveling mulch with you, and that's the type of guy that I would go to war
Okay.
with.
So
That's
what's that? So tell me more about that. What makes the best boss in landscaping? I mean,
I think
obviously
it's
him, it's nice that he's shoveling, but you're not saying he's the best because he's shoveling for you.
yeah.
You're saying something else, I think.
He's just willing to get out there, and he's not willing to ask you to do anything that you're not willing to do, that he's not willing to do himself. And,
Okay.
he under, I feel like a lot of times you get to a certain place in business and you kind of step back out of, maybe being in the field every day and stuff. And it's hard to understand certain things when you're not in the field, if that makes any sense about, shoveling mulch,
Yeah.
or you tend
Right.
to forget. You're thinking efficiency, and we need to be
Right.
making a certain amount of money. And you have to remember that they're on 100 degrees days. I mean, guys aren't going to be as productive as they are on a 75-degree day. And,
Yeah, yeah.
he made sure we always had drinks and stuff. And he's been an excellent role model on kind of the way I want to, the business I want to have, and the way the kind of boss that I would like to be. And
Yeah.
so I try my best to, I mean, and I'm definitely not always perfect, but, I try, I try my best to, kind of model myself after that, because I think, yeah, I thought it was cool that this guy had no need in the world. He has plenty of guys that could be out there shoveling that mulch for him, and he was in the
Yeah.
back of the truck. I mean, we were offering to take the shovel for him so he could wheelbarrow it, and he's like, "No, I got it." And I just
Huh.
thought that was cool. That's the type of guy that I can get behind, and I can stand behind.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess he's sort of treating you as an equal. Yeah,
Yeah,
he's showing you that he's leading by example. Yeah,
yeah. He's not
he's
scared
not
to get
just
out there and do it himself. His hands aren't too pretty.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
He's one of us. He does. When you get to a certain spot, especially where he's at, it would be easy to just never have to shovel any mulch ever again. And
yeah,
that
yeah,
just stood out to me. I thought it was very good company to work for.
yeah. I think that could exist at kind of at any level of
Yeah.
management, also maybe, right? Like I've heard of some CEOs for $10-20 million companies. There's no way they're going to be. They're probably not wearing the
Yeah.
right shoes to be shoveling mulch, and probably
No,
want them
no.
in the office because they're doing some important stuff over there.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And
But still, if you have a manager or a crew lead or something like that, I think that kind of attitude is just as important there too, you know?
yeah, absolutely. And there was definitely, I mean, yeah, he had to be on the back end a lot. He wasn't always in the back of the truck shoveling the mulch,
Yeah,
but
right.
the
Of
fact that he took
course.
that one time, that one day
Yeah,
to take it
right.
around and cut up with our team and kinda make us feel like a part of something bigger, and, I really admired that, and,
Yeah, I think you
that's
really touched on it there, that yeah, make you feel like something bigger, part of the family sort of. Yeah.
yeah,
That's
absolutely.
important. It's hard to do because there's that whole mixing business and pleasure and whatnot, and then it's like, how do you fire your friends if they're your friends, or should they be your friends, or are they really your friends if you're paying them?
Yeah,
Like
absolutely. So
it's
when I
hard.
was first in business and when we were younger than we are now, or company wise, I had friends that worked for me and some of them worked out great. I had some of the best guys I've ever had were some of my best buddies. Now, it didn't always happen though. I've had some situations where I've had to let go of people that have been my friends and it is a tough thing. So one thing I've tried to really steer clear of is mixing business and friendships too much. My guys can call me if they need it. I'm always there
Mhm.
for them, but in a, I guess, more of a leadership way, kind of not being, we're not going to go out and get a drink together, if that makes sense. You might,
Yeah, I know what you mean. I've seen people do it really well where they sort of make a hybrid of the 2 by having, monthly sort of like catered like food event. I don't know how to word it, like a barbecue or going to a restaurant or something, but or actually one that I really liked was they do a monthly catered breakfast. So they have the whole team in and they bring in, I guess breakfast isn't too hard to have catered. And
yeah,
then they kind of use that as a moment to talk about some of the company objectives and KPIs and stuff. And that seems to be working really well for a lot of guys to sort of I think a barbecue on the weekend is maybe invading these guys' personal time,
yeah,
like, if
absolutely.
it's a
Yeah. They got
really
stuff they
tight
want to do.
crew, some guys get away some guys can pull it off and they love it and they're all a big family and that works, but the next best I've seen has been like a breakfast where kind of you start the day a little bit late. I don't know if you even get them to come in early, so it's kind of on your time still, and that I've seen, I've doing that monthly, I've seen, really start to gel companies together and
Creates a good culture and all
yeah, and
that
then
stuff.
that's the hiring and getting customer testimonials and reviews and the whole culture. Yeah, that's one thing that I've seen work well. I've seen guys try it in all sorts of ways, where it's like, "Come have a party with us," and it's like,
Yeah.
like I kinda had other things that Friday night,
Yeah.
like, so it's tough because like, they're doing it from a place of love, but it's like when it's forced, it's tricky, but yeah, something about those breakfasts, that's one of the better ways that I've seen that handled. The other one that I've seen that seems to work nicely is, having some kind of clear, um, kind of career paths, for when they're getting hired. So um, it's like maybe, okay, I'm bringing you on to do mowing, and it's going to be at this rate. But like after this amount of time of being on time and good standing, then the rate's going to go up. And then after this amount of time, then we're going to train you on this other gear. And then after this amount of time, then we're going to make you a crew lead. And like not everybody completes the path, but the idea is that there's a
No.
vision. So
Yeah.
when they come into the company, they have this idea of sort of a purpose and a direction that they're going within the company. Because I think a lot of guys, especially in the landscaping industry, it's tough to say, but it doesn't require a huge amount of education for a lot of
No.
these labor positions. And so for a lot of these guys, it's a little bit of maybe not all of them, the more professional ones, definitely not, but a lot of the labor guys, it's kind of an end of the road job a little bit. It's
Absolutely. Yeah.
kind of
It's
like
not easy work.
they
It's kind of
yeah,
it,
they're maybe tapped
it's
out of
tough
other
labor.
options. Yeah, so but the difference of giving these guys a path, so it's like, "Yeah, you're here, but this isn't it. Like, we're taking you here. We're going somewhere together." That I find is pretty cool when you get these companies, all excited about some sort of a comfortable growth
Yeah, it's
curve.
easier for them to
Yeah,
buy in, kind of buy into the company culture and buy into what you're selling and what you're bringing on a daily basis. And
yeah, and that they're growing. It's weird. We as entrepreneurs, I think it's easy to kind of to do this sort of split between I'm an entrepreneur, meaning like I'm going to fend for myself and like scrape money together how I can from nature,
yeah,
versus the 9 to 5ers, the employees, who it's kind of like they're not really on that path. So it's sort of easy to start to think that the 9 to 5ers just want a job and that's it. but it's not true. All humans want to know they're going somewhere, right? That their life has a
Absolutely,
purpose and meaning.
absolutely.
So
I
yeah,
I'm a I'm a firm believer, and I've had guys leave here and start their own things, and they're still doing it, and I think that's awesome. And I
cool.
never want to hold
Yeah,
anybody back from, if that's where anytime anybody comes to me and says, "Hey, look, I've maybe got a better opportunity," or "I'm thinking about doing this," I always encourage them to do what's best for them. Because at the end of the
tough.
day,
Yeah,
while it might be tough for the company, we will be able to replace it on some way or another. Whether it may be
yeah,
tough for a little bit, but we'll be all right. And I like to see people get to where they want to go. And so if we're
yeah.
just sometimes we just end up being a stepping stone, and
Mhm.
it's not always great, but if it works out for people in the long run, I'm cool
Yeah.
with it.
I have a mentor who, when he's talking about churn and that, like, customer churn and this kind of idea or employee churn, he says he actually doesn't like the word churn, he calls it turnover. The kind of the British way that they sort of say, "We'll say turnover," and he takes it literally. He's, Bosnian, I think, this guy, but he hears it as actually turn over, and so it's
Yeah.
like, this is just your turn. We don't own these people,
Yeah,
right?
no, absolutely.
Like this is, or even with clients, this is just our turn. So we don't expect that it's our turn forever. Everybody has to have a
Absolutely
turn,
not. Yeah.
sort of.
And
So I thought that was kind of a cool way to look at that perspective. And I think you have a really
yeah,
good attitude on it. Yeah, I think it's much healthier that way. Than trying
yeah.
to
And
keep
I mean,
people.
people are gonna leave, people are gonna quit. That's just part of life. And I think
Yeah,
it says more about how you react to it and how you adjust.
yeah.
It says more about who you are as maybe a leader and a boss and whatnot, and how you handle it than anything.
And
I just also like to,
yeah, your abundance mentality, right? Yeah. Sorry, what were you gonna say?
yeah. So I try to, one of my main things, and it's something I learned from my grandfather a long time ago, is just kind of trying to always treat people the way I would want to be treated if I was back in their
Yeah,
shoes, because I have been there. I have been an employee,
yeah,
and I remember, I just try to remember, never forget where I came from, I guess, is a big
yeah.
thing.
It's easier said than done when if your
It
back's up
is. It
against the wall
absolutely
and
is.
you got more work than you can handle and guys are disappearing. Oh man,
Oh,
that's hard to, yeah.
it's a
I
nightmare.
I I seen it too from the marketing side because, oh man, the horror stories of switching marketing companies.
Oh, I
Because
guarantee it.
anytime a client comes to us, it's always like, so do you own and have control of all your stuff, or is this going to be a battle from your last company? And I used to be sort of the mindset of like, I never felt good about it, so I was never like fully committed to it. But it's sort of like the idea of like stickiness, and the idea of retainment, like client lifetime value, and this kind of things, and different tactics you can use to make it easier or harder for somebody to move somewhere else. And yeah, no, I've been through the loop on that one. I worked for a marketing agency that was the worst, and then I tried to be much better than them, and then I accidentally ended up being like not the
It's
best when I
easy.
first started,
It's easy to
and
do. I think that's
and
easy.
then but
A
now
lot
it's
more people
different.
than probably want to let on can relate to that.
Yeah, well, that's how we learn, I guess. I just try not to make the same mistakes twice,
Yep.
but yeah, so now it's like now it's like somebody wants to leave, like there's nothing stopping them. They own all their accounts, everything's good, but still blows my mind as to how tough it is to get like for all the other companies I deal with, it's not the way they do it. But I think that I I don't know. I think that with the flow of information and I think COVID kind of was like this weird sort of jumpstart to people thinking about their rights and thinking about what they want to put up with and not.
Absolutely.
And I think that's like what we saw in the landscaping world, the minimum pay rates jumped across North America, and that really changed things. So yeah, it's interesting. It's really fascinating to see where freedoms and things are going in that. And I guess to
Yeah.
tie it back to the freedom driven landscaper, we don't have too much time. I don't want to take too much of your time, but
No, not at
um,
all.
from the perspective of freedom and these kinds of things, like, has there been anything in particular? I'm sure the checklists and processes, but maybe there's any. I don't know if you would like to speak to any numbers in particular that you pay attention to, or something, or anything you've done in your marketing strategy or something like that. But things that you've done that have well, I shouldn't assume. I guess maybe I should ask first. Like, I assume that you probably want to start your own business and be your own boss because you had some sort of aspiration of freedom or something bigger. There's always this like this drive in entrepreneurs of a better life that we can create if we have
Yeah.
control. So, like,
So,
would you mind telling me about like, yeah, how have you
yeah, how I got
manifested that?
kind
When
of how to.
yeah,
So
yeah,
I was in college at the time, um, and honestly, I was going through some stuff personally, and I was already landscaping, and I was kind of tired of being where I was at that point in my life. If that makes any sense. And
oh yeah,
I don't really know. I got some courage one day, and I decided to make a post about doing some landscaping, and that's
mhm,
kind of and it kind of just picked up from there, and things just kind of really started going. Honestly, before I even realized, it was kind of a fast thing. It happened a little bit quicker than I think I was ready for, and I was able to adjust. But yeah, I think it was more just I at the time I really just wanted to make a little bit of extra money while I was in school. I didn't end up finishing school. It ended up taking me away from school, uh, which was fine with me. I wasn't really all the way bought into school anyway. Never been a huge thing for me. I was just kind of doing it, kind of going through the motions. Um,
mhm,
so yeah, and then I think really now that I've worked for myself and stuff, I love it, and I couldn't really ever see it any differently. Not to say that I'll never be there again, but
yeah.
I try to keep an open mind on it and
Yeah.
kind of.
But has there been anything, um so a lot of guys start their own business and then wind up with less freedom than maybe if they didn't, right? Like if they still had their evenings and weekends and whatnot. Has there been any ways in particular that you've kind of protected your freedom to make sure that this is actually working for you? You know what I mean?
Let me understand. Let me make sure I'm understanding. Like a work life balance. Is that what you're?
Yeah, I guess that's a good way to word it. Yeah, I guess I just mean like a lot of these businesses can really kind of suck people into them, you know, and to a point where you kind of wonder if they really are more autonomous. Because if you're
Yeah,
chasing your company around and it's like, sure, you don't have a boss, but maybe if you're looking after 500 lawns, you have 500 bosses.
yeah.
So
So
you
I've
know what
tried
I
to
mean?
just set some simple. I don't know. I guess I would call them boundaries. Not really necessarily boundaries, but you know,
Mm,
I'll answer my phone until we're open till 5 o'clock. Roughly, typically is when, unless we're doing snow removal or something like that. So typically, I don't answer the phone after 5 o'clock. There's obviously times I got to work Saturdays, and sometimes it depending on the time of the year. Like around here, Derby's big. Derby's a huge time for us. Everybody's trying to get flowers in because the Derby's right here in Louisville, and so people are having Derby parties. So typically around that time of the year, we are working a little bit later, and sometimes Saturdays and stuff like that. But really, I just sometimes you just have to have a shut off. I know for me personally, I just gotta I've got to have a break if I'm going to be able to go in a way that I want to go. I can keep going. I could keep going all day, but it's like, am I being really productive at that point? And, I don't want to get burnt out either. It's easy to do in this industry. You can get, seen 1,000 guys do it. I've done it myself. And so it's something I've really tried to focus on is just, making sure we got set hours, we're not, we respond to all voicemails Monday morning. If we're, sometimes we're working Saturdays, but somebody's calling on a Sunday, or I try not to text. Another thing is big for me, even though it's a lot easier sometimes. I try my best to avoid texting with clients and stuff because sometimes it's easy to send a text at 9:30 at night and stuff. And when I'm trying to decompress from my day, it might have been a good day or a bad day. And just sometimes you just can't always get the tone of a text message across the right way, or maybe you don't read it the right way. So I try to stick to mostly phone calls, emails and stuff like that. But yeah, it's tough to do, to say the least.
how strict are you with your boundaries
Well,
do
that's another. Yeah, that I'm
yeah,
not always the strictest with it. I'll be honest. I mean, there's definitely been times that I've texted and we've talked after hours, but
yeah.
since we've grown somewhat, I've been able to somewhat realize that like we can't do it all day. Nobody wants to do it all day. There, typically at 9:30 at night, there's nothing at 9:30 at night I'm going to be able to do about it anyway. So typically I try to look at it till, I mean, I'll call 'em, I can call them the next morning and we can get it taken care of because at 9:30 at night, typically we're not going to be able to come out somewhere or do something depending on the situation. Now, snow removal, we're phones on 24/7. Got to have it, just in case of emergencies and stuff like that. Certain properties got to be very specifically tailored. So yeah, I would say that it, I don't want it to sound like I am super strict on that because I have definitely from time to
Right.
time blurred those lines. So it's just something that I slowly am trying to work towards, I guess is a good way of putting it.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, no, there's a few things that I've done similar to that. And you're speaking my language when you say avoiding text messaging. With a lot of my clients, that's one of the first things I try to convince them to cut is to only allow communicating with clients between phone and email. Mostly because it's really hard to delegate the texting. And if you have an office of people managing it, like eventually if you have a few admin people that are handling requests, the texts become quite a mess unless you have like a really good tool or system for keeping on top of them. And the other thing is when you allow texting with clients, you also allow much less thought through information to come, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
with an email, you kind of have to actually sit down and think about what you're doing. But if you're accepting text messages, then these guys can
You
just
can just,
whatever's off the top of the dome, right? And
that's not
it's
always a good thing. Yeah. That
no,
can't,
it's never a good thing, and
yeah.
it's always, it's these half-baked things where it's like and then they don't get back to you, and then it's phone tag, and then it falls between the cracks, and then it's always the customer's always right. So, if the customer's always right, I would say don't let them put you in a position where you're always wrong.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great way of putting it. I never heard it put that way, but that's a phenomenal way of putting it. Yeah, it's as simple as that. I also noticed that y sometimes you text with when you can because you see it instantly, you respond to it instantly, and sometimes it's best. I've always tried to take 5 minutes to make sure that I'm what I'm gonna say because we've
Yeah,
all been in a position where somebody sent you a text that maybe wasn't that you felt came off and you wanna your first reaction is just to pop right back, and it's not
yeah,
always the best reaction though, and so I try to take a minute to clearly collect all my thoughts and say what I want to
succinct.
say in a professional and articulate way, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. I did that. So getting rid of texting. The other one that's worked really nicely for me is separating client support email with all the other email. So I have a support email, which is where all the clients can contact me. But then I also have like a personal work email, and that's where I talk to all my vendors and support and tools and notifications and all that stuff. And then separating those 2, I mean, then the obvious one on top of that, that everybody should do if they haven't done already is to separate your, personal and business phone lines. There's a lot of guys who don't do that, and that's a game changer. 'Cause then you can
I gotta
have
be honest. I'm still one of the
yeah,
I've gotta make that switch. That's something my mom has recently been helping me on the back end of things and kind of helping me in the office and with some of the admin tasks and stuff. And that's something that where she has been hounding me about and something that I need to go do
yeah. Well,
currently
it's
and
nice
go.
because then you can program it so that the calls can't come through after 5 PM and you don't see it, right? And so that's the other thing, by separating my support email out, evenings, weekends, I don't see it, but I can keep the company running, right? Because I can still see all the other stuff, but I don't see
And
the
I
company
had never
stuff.
thought of that idea, and that's actually a phenomenal idea that I will more than likely end up implementing very soon
Yeah.
because I
Well,
think that's a great. It's also good to give people that, and they know that they can email somewhere on the support side of things. It's not just one email where all these emails are piling in, and which
yeah,
is kind
right.
of essentially somewhat what we're doing now. So it's
Mhm.
anything's a step up from that, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
so
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
always trying to look for ways to grow
Well,
and progress.
the next, like, pro tip on top of that again, I wouldn't be bothering you if it wasn't, like, a real game changer is, we set up a ticketing system a couple years ago. So what that does is it allows us to you can people do it with tags and things in Gmail, and it's doable, but it's nicer with a tool. And so this way, each email thread, each conversation is its own ticket, and we can track whether the tickets are open or closed. So now it's very, very clear whether or not this item is being dealt with or not and who's responsible. So what we have is we have it so that when we respond to somebody's request, we can set that ticket back as being waiting on client. It's the tag. And then any tickets that are set to waiting on client automatically follow up with the client. So every week it'll say, "Hey, did you still need any help with this or whatever?" And so honestly, since the day we set up that ticketing system, never, not even once has something fallen through on our side. It's like
Is that like a
acknowledgement drops.
software? Is there like a software that you use?
Yeah, we use, Freshdesk. There's Freshdesk, Zendesk, they have it built into Service Autopilot. It might even be built into Jobber and these tools, but just a way of being able to track whether or not that email thread is done being dealt with or not, you know? Are we
Yeah,
done
that's
with this or not, right? Like, has it been
that would
resolved
be
or
some
not?
office. Does it also help you log calls and stuff like that as well? Like phone
For
calls?
call logging, I always recommend CallRail. We set up all of our clients on that. It's
What
really
is it
cool
called?
system. It's called CallRail, and, yeah, no, I'll tell you, we can wrap up the podcast here in a second. I'll tell you all about it,
Okay,
but
cool.
but I recommend that to everybody to have, to don't do texting if it's just coming to somebody's phone. Do it maybe if you have a CRM that it goes to, sort of thing,
Yeah,
where the team can access it and also know whether that text has been dealt with or not, so that you can have like multiple people working on that same inbox and not be confused as to who's handling what. And then, yeah, separating business and personal phone, separating support and internal or other email. Yeah, those separations, because what I found, I'm an automation,
I love them too.
nerd. I'm
They
obsessed.
saved my life.
Well, because what I found was, especially with landscaping businesses and lawn care, and they're so seasonal that things get thrown up in the air so much that you're already putting so much effort into kind of like, prepping gear for the new season. Oh, the old season came back again. Okay, switching back. Okay, now switching forward. Like
Oh
all
yeah,
this stuff all the time. Anything that I found that anything wasn't. It was like it's like I don't know, trying to have a picnic on like on a rough seas on a container ship, and everything's like flying all over. Like anything that's not tied down is falling off. You know what I mean? Because I'm running
absolutely.
around trying to make sure nobody else falls off. So the best way that I found to tie these things down metaphorically is to automate it, or to like have it not be human controlled. So for example, I'm tempted to check support in evenings and weekends. So literally I can't check it on my phone. I just can't. Well, I could actually. I can. I know the way around because I
Yeah,
found it.
yeah.
But like it's hard,
I know what you mean. I get what you're saying on that.
I don't have the app. I could, and if I want to, I have to go log in through the browser, and it's really annoying. And I do that on purpose because I want it, and I because of that
You
I
want to make it
need.
difficult for yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, and then that's
Sometimes
the same
it's
thing we do with a lot of our clients, because a lot of the clients we're working with, they get to this point where they can't really grow and they're not really sure why, and it's just because like there's too much chaos, sort of, and so a lot of the time they think that it's the problem with the business, and a lot of the time it is sort of a problem with the business in that the systems and those like hard rules aren't in place that are getting, things are too wishy-washy, and
yeah,
so it's not solid.
not clear.
But the other thing is what happens is the owner gets so overwhelmed that they aren't clear. And then when the owner's not able to think clearly, then nothing's clear, right? And so
No,
a lot of the time
absolutely.
we'll get CallRail set up, and then we only run the ads during their working hours, and the phone only rings during their working hours. After hours, it goes to somebody whose designated job is to do it after hours, or it's a answering service, or it's voicemail. But I'll cut off the business owner and say, "Okay, you're not doing this stuff 24/7 anymore because we need you like but more
Here
in the
when
game."
you're here. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, no, just it's kind of funny because a lot of the time there's nobody looking after us as these business owners, right? It's kind of,
No, yeah.
and then we have those 500 bosses that like I learned the hard way. They a lot of them are our friends and we do love them, but at the end of the day, they're
It's
not
business.
really our friends. It is business. Yeah, I hate that saying, but like when you raise your prices, you really see who's really your friend. Um,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
but so yeah, like it's just creating those buffers and those barriers, and doing them in a way that you can't kind of get around them. That I found has been such a game changer for a lot of these guys, and it's like all of a sudden their energy's back, their clarity's back, the culture's better. So it's almost like going slower to going faster. Like slow, what is it? Slow is smooth and smooth is fast.
Yeah,
Is this the seals? I think that is. Yeah, these kind of ideas that they're so wishy-washy, but I'm really grateful to have gotten the chance to speak to so many guys in the industry and to get to kind of push this message a little bit
yeah.
because we don't have a lot of people telling us what's up, sort of, because we're the boss.
Takes a
Like
lot of
this,
self-discipline, you know, it takes, as a business owner, so it takes, a lot of self-discipline, and a lot of times we don't have that person to kind of check us when there's not always that good checks and balance. And so you have to learn how to do it yourself, and make sure that you're staying on, you know what I
yeah.
mean? Because if you're not staying on top of it, it's going to leak through the crack, and it's going to seem into other things, and it's going to, essentially affect everything else in the business.
And, I think you said it really well at the beginning, actually, where you were talking about, um, treating the team and what we were talking about with your old boss, because they will keep you in check if you empower them to, right? And if you build the
Absolutely.
team in that way, like there's this idea even with SOPs. I bring it up because everybody loves it so much, but with the SOPs, that it's not about going and buying or paying somebody to write your lists for you. It's actually about training the team to write their own lists. Just training them how awesome it
Yeah.
is to not forget stuff all the time.
Yeah, because
and
at the end of the day, it makes everybody's life a little bit easier. Nobody wants to get all the way
right.
out to a job site and have forgot something.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So it's all this culture stuff. Yeah, that's cool. That's what we're talking about on this podcast is like all these things to get onto this upward spiral, because I see it all the time. There's ways where guys kind of they get to this, it's like magic where like the team actually likes each other and they're happy to be there, and they're excited about the possibilities for the company and helping you get there, and they're holding you accountable, holding each other accountable in a healthy and friendly way. And that then customers notice it, margins improve, referrals improve, marketing ROI miraculously improves. Like a lot of guys, they expect marketing to do it for them, and it's sort of it's a touchy
It's
subject, right?
it's just the start of it. Is like the way I think of it.
Yeah,
It's one thing to get the call. It's another thing to go do the go do the estimate, weigh in the
yeah,
job, manage the job. Get everything lined out and keep somebody happy and make sure everybody's on the good. Everybody's happy and all that
yeah.
kind of stuff. It's just kind of the tip of it, I guess, is a good way to put it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's like, they're amplifying how awesome you are in the first place, and so they can amplify how crap you are if you're crap, or they
Yeah,
can amplify how amazing you are if you're great.
yeah,
And that's where I see these guys getting onto these into such nice situations where they don't even necessarily have to be growing at a crazy rate. Just a little bit of growth, so it's better than decline, better than flatline where you're nervous. Just a predictive growth, and a comfortable team, and a hiring system where you're not afraid, like you say, to be empowering guys to go do their own thing, and then bringing in new guys to grow and empower, and then the good ones see what you're doing and they stick around. And yeah, well, not the good ones. I shouldn't. They're all good, but what I mean is the ones who wanna be part of a team and don't wanna go do their own
absolutely.
thing. They start to stick around, and you start to build a roster of more of those kinda guys in that culture. Yeah, no, it's really cool. No, yeah. But thanks so much for coming on, man, today. I
Yeah,
I
I
really
appreciate you
appreciate
having me
it.
out. It was
D
yeah,
d d what
I love talking with you, and I look forward to hearing more and listening to what everybody else has to say and learning some new things and growing some more. So
no, thanks so much. I really appreciate talking with you today.
yeah,
Thanks for coming.
yeah, no problem.